Hello and welcome back. This week we are going to talk about kind of a hot topic. I've been reached out to asking kind of questions and what I do, more on the lines of side mount, but we're going to talk about CCR bailout and bailout planning. It's a long topic because there's a lot of different caveats and ways you can go about it. This was just going to talk about what I'm using for diving a back-mounted rebreather, and then the next one we'll talk about the side mount, the setup with the bottles, and then kind of take the two of those into a third part of using cave diving with the rebreather and bailout for there. Won't get into the configuration, that could be for a different video topic, and not going to get into bailout rebreathers just yet, but that is definitely a topic we will discuss. There's really not much to see in this video. I might put some pictures up and kind of scroll through. I'm just sitting here by the fireplace while I talk. One thing I have to say, I guess, before this, just because of day and age, this information is definitely not a substitute for proper decompression training and rebreather training, but I figured it's kind of been a hot topic, and this will open up maybe some discussions, maybe make some things easier for people that have been doing it forever as well, and just a different angle on it, and maybe help newer people not have to struggle so much in recreating the wheel. This didn't just come overnight. This has been iterations. I've been using rebreathers now for 10 years, and I started off with standard mixes and things like that, and it evolved, and we'll go into why it's evolved kind of into the way it has. But one of the things that I make and that I have and I carry is this little paper here, and this is basically my bailout plans that I have, and I keep this in my gear box, and I take it out when I'm prepping for a dive. And basically what I have is I have depth ranges in 50-foot increments, starting from basically 50, or we can say the first one's 0 to 100 feet, and then it goes from 100 to 150 feet, 150 to 200 feet, 200 to 250, and then when I was first doing this with with just a single rebreather and just open circuit bailout, we weren't really diving, we didn't have any wrecks really that we were diving in the 250 to 300 range, so this particular one jumps up and goes from 300 to 350. So I have my depths, and they're broken down in 50-foot increments, and then for each one of the depths there's a max bottom time, the algorithm I use, and then the sets of tanks that a standard dill mix that I run, and the bottles that I would need for that depth range. And one of the things that I've noticed, again, this is just something I picked on in the gas planning, is that if I'm using, like, some of my standard dills might be less helium for shallower, but if I was using, like, just say a 1433 was used to be a standard mix that I used in my dill for shallow stuff, and then it would go to 1050, and then from there it would go to like 860, 862. Then I started banking it, and I just run 1050, so it's air, 1050, or like an 862 for once we get over the 250-foot area. But if you were using, like I said, a 1433 and you had 1050, you can still run that in the bailout plans. It's negligible, the difference, so it's something I don't worry about. But again, do your research, do what you're comfortable with. So we'll kind of tune out the video and maybe scroll some pictures, just put the logo up and kind of listen like a podcast. But what I wanted to get into after that is, so now in the planning phase, there's some key factors in planning. Just like any kind of gas planning, you have your sack rate for the bottom and deco. And this is one thing that everybody always comes up when you talk about this. Oh, your sack rate changes when you're on rebreather because you don't have to worry about it. Well, it's true to some extent, but it depends. Mine didn't really change that much as far as what my emergency sack rate is. I dive a lot. I don't dive on the rebreather all the time, and I still teach once in a while, so maybe that is a contributing factor. But whatever you do, you should be checking that occasionally. Typically at the beginning of the year, I'll check that, especially if I'm just doing some warm-up dives or I'm teaching and I'm doing it with my students, and just get a working rate and a resting one. And that's what that's what I put in. The working one I'll put in for my bottom phase, and then like a normal, which would be between the resting and whatever I calculated for the working phase for my deco. So that way it's a little bit, you're building in a little padding and conservatism. The next thing you need to do is you need to figure out your algorithm. Now, I run a pretty aggressive algorithm. You'll see when I post what my tables and stuff are at the end. I run 70-90 gradient factors. I used to run VPN 0, and I switched over about 3-4 years ago to gradient factors, kind of when the whole thing about the deep stops, and I felt better because I was starting to have issues with deep stops, especially the thermocline wasn't there one year, and I was doing stops and really getting cold deep, and I felt like it was causing me little issues. Didn't take any hits, some like joint pain, just felt lethargic after the dives. I did some research. I'm running 70-90 now, kind of get up shallow. And the 90 I know is aggressive. But for bailout planning, you could also run a more aggressive program. Yeah, maybe you might suffer a little bit or have a little pain, but to me, that is a trade-off than, being dead or having to carry so much gas that you kind of can't enjoy or, do the dives comfortably. Again, that's a personal choice and something you have to weigh out and figure out. But I know a lot of guys that I dive with, they'll bump up they'll be a little more aggressive on the deco schedule, and like just get shallow, get there, and then if you have gas left and your schedule's out, you can still hang more. That's not a problem. You don't have to get out of the water then, but it's kind of the bare minimum that you'll accept to get out of the water, fairly unharmed. No major injuries or major hits. And again, you could follow your normal deco schedule and do it 100 times and 101 time, take a hit. But that's just kind of the nature of the beast. I also do not plan for gas sharing, meaning I don't count on anybody else's gas, and nobody that I'm diving with is counting on my gas as part of their plans. Yes, it's there if we're diving together, but I'm not hiding it. I dive by myself all the time. I'm not going to call a dive because somebody can't make it down, especially when we go offshore and deep. We'll get in the water at the same time. If everything goes well on the way down, we're on the bottom, we might do a dive together. And some dives we plan out and we're a buddy team and there's an objective. And sometimes we just jump in the water together, go down the line, and go our separate ways, and come back or pass each other on the bottom, but we're not there side by side. And that being said, I don't agree with the buddy gas sharing, but if you need that, if you ever just did an out of air situation, you need to be close to your buddy. It's not like, oh, the viz is good and I can see him 20, 30 feet away. You need to be within 5 feet, almost arm's distance of them if they're going to be usable in a situation like that, in my opinion. So that's my little rant about the gas sharing. I also, one of the key things for me is being able not to have to carry more than 2 tanks for bailout. Yes, I can carry more, but it's a pain in the ass. On a boat, gearing up, it's easy to put 2 tanks on. You could side mount one on each side. You can stack them up on one side. It's easy. Once you start adding a third 80 or 2 80s and a 40, yeah, you can do it. But if you need to take the tanks off to get inside when you're trying to penetrate a wreck, it just adds more. So my goal was to try to minimize the amount of tanks that I'm carrying, still carry enough gas, and also still be able to get decent bottom times, not 10-minute bottom times. I'm on a rebreather, I want to take advantage of it, and sometimes I'll do short 10-15 minute dives, and then sometimes I'll do 45-50 minute dives. I've done that length of bottom time at 230 feet. Yeah, the hang was there, but the conditions were good. I did have the gas that I needed, and I went. My gas selection, again, I started like everybody else with kind of the standard mixes, and it evolved. So the gas selection that you're going to see at the end is kind of optimize the deco, or optimize the bailout, and also keep me from having to carry more than 2 tanks. And you'll really see too when you start playing with the numbers in the planner, if I recall correctly, adding a third tank, it doesn't shave that much time off of your deco. So really, again, it's one of those cost benefit things. I save 5 minutes, but I got to carry an extra 80. It's not worth it. Or maybe you just need to cut down on your bottom times that you're planning on doing. The other thing that I know is going to be a hot topic, but this is my opinion, that's why I'm saying it's what I do. You don't have to do it, you don't have to agree on it, but I do not plan for a major CO2 hit. I don't believe, and I could be wrong and it could happen to me, that a major CO2 hit is going to just happen. I think the proper build and prep of your unit and proper procedures of using it, meaning packing the scrubber, doing the checks for the flap valves, doing your positive and negatives, and then transporting it. I put my rebreather in the seat and seatbelt it once it's going somewhere, and it stays up so that way any kind of vibration, it's just packing the scrubber more, there's no chance of it channeling down. And same thing when it goes onto the boat and we have 8-10 hour drives out there, it's standing on the scrubber vertically, so there's no increase in channeling. And then when I get there, when it goes on the bench, I still do a positive and negative just to make sure it's holding at a bare minimum. But the big thing is doing the stereo check on your build, and then if we're doing overnight trips, we rebuild, we take the units apart, put new scrubber in after 2 dives or 1 dive or 3, depending on the what's going on, scrubber size, that kind of thing. And the proper procedures, in my opinion, will catch it. And the other thing is, don't push your scrubber. The material's cheap. I could probably count on one hand how many times that I've kept scrubber between trips, even shallow trips, to reuse it. I just toss it, put in new scrubber. It's like $7 to fill up my unit, something like that. I think I figured it out. It's not a big deal. It's not worth the risk. And I feel this way looking at the examples that I've seen, where I've seen breakthroughs. People were pushing their scrubbers, old Zorb, or the issues with the flapper valves. And that's one thing. And they're small, they're cheap. We forget about them. I've left them in for too long where they started to get sticky, and I was like, why am I doing this? They're cheap, they're a critical piece of gear, pull them out, swap them out. Anyway, moving on to the actual planning part. So I plan to have, there's 2 scenarios that I plan for to check that we have enough gas for the use. Is 10 minutes on open circuit, and then 1 minute on open circuit. So the 10 minutes on open circuit would be whatever my max time that I say that I want to do a dive, so just say 35 minutes. I would plan 25 minutes on the loop, and and then another 10 minutes on open circuit. Now in that 10 minutes, there's a couple things that are going to happen. I'm either, I get off the loop, a quick switch, a sanity breath, or you're checking something, or adding gas, that's not off the loop. Once you get off the loop, and that's another topic, is I try to stay on the loop, fix the problem. But I've come off, I've bailed out, I've come off and gone back on. Anyway, so you have 10 minutes. And now again, this is open water and wreck diving that we're talking about, not cave diving here. 10 minutes is a long time. I mean, that's a third of your bottom time it could be. In this scenario, it is, basically. So that being said, I'm either going to get on the open circuit and I have 10 minutes to get back to the line. If I can't get back there, or if I'm lost or disoriented, so here's a couple scenarios now that are happening, I'm going to shoot a bag. Well, it doesn't take me that long to shoot a bag, at 5 minutes tops. So you take the bag out, you tie it, use the bailout gas, send it up, boom, you have your upline. Should be 5 minutes, maybe it's a little longer, but you still have that reserve gas that you could use to shoot the bag, and you come up immediately. One of the other things is, as you're moving back, if you're going, sorry, let me stop there. So that would be if I know I can't make it back to the line, or I don't know where the line is, just having a bad day, just shoot a bag, get off the bottom, start getting shallow, have plenty of gas. No shame in shooting the bag, and we did a video on New Jersey upline, so you can check that out for the rigging and talk about that. The other thing is, in 10 minutes on the scooter, which most of us are using, especially deep, that covers, you can lap a wreck. These wrecks are not that big. Most people think they go so far, they don't go more than 100 feet. I've lapped some of these wrecks. I'm going to say one of the largest wrecks that's intact, but we don't scooter because the viz has been that bad, is like the Andrea Doria. But these other wrecks that we're diving that are deep, it doesn't take you, 10 minutes you can lap the wreck. So 10 minutes is a long time. Again, it's kind of an arbitrary number that I came up with, discussed with other people, and we kind of agreed that's a good amount of time planning. You may feel comfortable with more, maybe less. I wouldn't go less. I think it's a conservative approach, but not super conservative. That's my opinion. So that there, though, lets you know how much gas you're going to need when you run that scenario, how much gas you're going to need for your bottom phase. Then the other scenario that I run is I do 1 minute open circuit. So back to 35 minutes on the loop, or 35-minute bottom time. So now, let's say that's what we did it, and we're coming back to the anchor line, and we've got to get off the loop at 34 minutes. Well, we know we have plenty, we know if our scenario works for 10 minutes of open circuit on the bottom, we have plenty of gas for 1 minute. But that's not what we're checking for here. Here, what we're checking for is the deco gas that you're carrying. Because when you go on the loop, or excuse me, when you go off the loop to bail out, your PPO2 is going to be, in most cases, higher, a lot higher than what you were running on the bottom. I run a 1.0 is what I average on the bottom, and I do that because that's kind of not really so much for the oxygen, more for the sensor. In case the sensor's off, even though it's reading a 1, it could be something more than that. So I'd rather be on the cautious side that's not too high, meaning because these sensors aren't made for this, they're made to read in 1 atmosphere. And when you get over a 1, you're it's just an interpolation of the cells, which we're assuming is linear, but something could happen with a cell where it's not. So it's just kind of a built-in safety factor. But I run a 1. You can run whatever you want. I'm just telling you what I do. And then my gas is at, again, I have the ranges. So the deepest depth of that range, my bottom bailout is a 1.6. So my PO2 off the loop goes a lot higher. It actually brings the deco obligation down. But now, if you're coming back to the line and you're on the loop all but 1 minute, your deco is going to be longer, and you're not going to be on the higher PO2 bottom mix for long, 1 minute, and then you're coming up. So this checks that your deco gas volume is correct, is enough. Now, when I just put these two scenarios into multi-deco or V-planner, whatever you're using, check it, and then I just round up to like the nearest whole number. I don't add anything to the numbers that it spits out, because I already have a buffer in my sack rate. I don't do like 1.5 times the amount or whatever. And again, this is for me. If my buddy's having a bad day, well, if I can give it to him, I will. But I don't count on anybody. The guys I dive with, they know we can count on each other, but we don't plan to use our buddy in an emergency. So that's how I run the scenarios. And then what I do is the block of times that I was talking about, so say 200 foot. Okay, say 150 to 200 foot. I would start at 200 foot, and I would put in, see where I wanted to get my max bottom time. So for me, it's 45 minutes. And I know that because, like I said, my plans are done. But you can start where you want, at a number that you're looking for, what your max possibly would be, and then go up or down from there. So I wanted to say I was planning this from the beginning, my 150, 200 foot range. I want to use 45 minutes as my max. So I would plan 35 minutes, 10 minutes open circuit would give me 45. On 790, I would put my 2 gases in, run them, and see where I'm at. Then, I would run the same scenario, 200 feet, for 44 minutes with 1 minute open circuit, and see where my gases are. From what I recall and the way I did this, like I said, I haven't done it in a while because I figured it out and I haven't ran all the plans, but I have it here so that way I don't have to. You can't see it, but I'm showing you the paper. Is the bottom counts, your max bottom mix need for bailout is usually off the 10 minutes open circuit, and then your max deco need is the 1 minute open circuit close to the end of your bottom time. So you run that with your gas selection and see where you're at. And then from there, you could either tweak gases or you can tweak the bottom time, either going up or down. So once you have your bottom time, I know 45 minute works for me, then I put 190 foot in, and I do the same 2 scenarios and I see what it is. And usually every 10 feet or so, depending on the depths, like in this particular case, 190 brings me to 50 minutes, 180 brings me to 55. And so forth. But in the deeper ones, sometimes you can't jump up 5 minutes in 10-foot increments. You might be 250, 240, or both the same bottom times, and then 230, 220, or 2 more different bottom times. However, I'm going to put in my plans for you to see in there, but this is how I came up with the planning. Again, these gas mixes are the efficient that I use are to allow me to do these dives with 2 tanks maximum and kind of be efficient over the range of depths that we talked about. Again, you're going to see my plans that I post are only up to 250 feet because after that, in my opinion, that's where the bailout rebreather shines, and I've been using that for about 3 or 4 years now, and I typically don't do any dives over 250 without that system. However, if I do, again, like I said, I have depths because we were doing dives before I was using the bailout rebreather in the 300 to 250, or excuse me, 300 to 350 range, and in that case, I had to bring 3 tanks, and I was diving 380s there. But if you're doing depth dives like that, you should be able to figure this out. You should know this already, the stuff that we're talking about. However, the bailout rebreather is a different conversation, different topic, different video. Hope this was informative, helpful. Please leave comments. I'm sure there's stuff I said in here that's going to spark huge debates and arguments. Again, this is what I do. It's worked for me. I've been diving rebreathers for 10 years. This is going to be my 19th season diving. All different environments. It works, but it may not work for you. The biggest key is understanding what you're doing and why you're doing it, And if I were to ask you, not just say, well, this person's carrying it, or, well, I used to dive this on open circuit, so this should work. You should know the numbers, know why you're carrying what you're carrying, and you should be comfortable doing it. If you want to carry 3 tanks, that's fine. If you want to carry 4 tanks, that's fine. But for me and a lot of the guys I dive with, we try to minimize that because gearing up on the boat can be difficult. Getting off the boat with that gear, because we put everything on and jump off the boat with it. We don't get dressed in the water. The environment doesn't allow it most of the time. And if I have to, I want to be able to get on the boat with all my gear. Normally, I take everything off but the rebreather, but that's conditional, dependent on the conditions. And I take all my gas with me because I might not make it back to the anchor line, or the anchor line might not be there when I return. So, hope you enjoyed. Please leave any comments or questions below. Feel free to reach out. And the next one we will talk about side mount bailout. So stay tuned.